Today we will be talking about the Idaho murders. The victims were Ethan, Madison, Xana, and Kaylee. The following information is the timeline as we know it. According to Moscow police, Madison and Kaylee went out to the Corner Club bar on this night. Meanwhile, Ethan and Xana, who were dating, went to Sigma Chi House that night as well. And the surviving roommates, Dylan and Bethany, were also out that night. At about 1:40 a.m., Kaylee and Madison are seen on video at the Grub Truck, a local food vendor, and used a private individual to get a ride home, arriving home at 1:45 a.m. The girls can be seen at the food truck and seem to be with the guy in the black jacket and a grey hood up. He stays at a distance from the girls as they order and then moves to stand with them. The girls then collect their food and leave. The guy is told by the person he's talking to that the girls are leaving. At this point, police have not labelled him as a suspect after speaking with him. The police have not gotten any suspects at this point. Ethan and Xana got home about 1:45 a.m. Ethan didn't live at the house, but he was sleeping over that night. Police believe the murders took place between 4 a.m. to 4:25. According to the affidavit, Xana ordered a DoorDash to the house at about 4 a.m. One of the surviving roommates said she woke up around 4 a.m. to what sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog. The roommate said she heard someone who she thought was to be Kaylee saying there's someone here. However, due to phone records of Xana's, it could have been her as she was on TikTok at about 4:12 a.m. The roommate thought she heard crying coming from Xana's room. Then she said she heard a male voice say something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." The roommate said she opened her door again when she heard the crying, and she saw a man in black clothes and a mask walking past her. She stood frozen and in shock. We later find out that the roommate who saw the perpetrator was Dylan. Dylan said she didn't recognize the man. She described him as 5'10", not very muscular but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. The night the students were murdered was the sound of a scream caught on police body cam footage. Have a listen. Dylan and Bethany called friends over to their house because they thought one of the victims on the second floor had passed out and wasn't waking up. At 11:58 a.m, a 911 call from one of the roommates' phones requested help for an unconscious person. The responding officers then found all 4 victims. With the investigation going on, photos were coming of what the house looked like. To the shock of everyone, the murders were so horrific there was blood seeping through the cracks to be seen on the outside. After the bodies were discovered, surveillance video was viewed and it showed the suspect's white Hyundai Elantra go by the victim's house 3 times before entering the area for the 4th time at 4:04 a.m. Police said they traced the car's travel that night back to Pullman, Washington, where the suspect, Bryan Kohberger, lived. Turns out he is a 28-year-old criminology PhD student. Bryan's phone was tracked heading to Moscow before the attack, but his phone was turned off between 2:47 in the morning and 4:48 in the morning, which is consistent with Kohberger attempting to conceal his location during the quadruple homicide. He also returned to the area of the house where the 4 students were killed just after 9 a.m, about 5 hours after the murders, based on phone records. His phone was near the victim's house at least 12 times before the murders, at least as far back as August. All of those times, except for one, were late at night or early in the morning. Autopsies were conducted and determined all victims were stabbed multiple times. The 4 students were probably asleep when attacked and some had defensive wounds, according to the police. Ethan's family held his memorial service. Ethan was one of the most incredible people you'll ever know, his mother Stacy Chapin told reporters before the service. He laughed continuously, he smiled when he woke up and was still smiling when he went to bed. He was kind to all and a friend to all, his obituary said. Kaylee's father, Steve, told ABC News that the students died quickly and did not bleed for hours, so an earlier call would not have saved their lives. Kaylee's father felt frustrated by the lack of transparency from police, but still supported them well enough for their investigation. Kaylee's father said, "I have to assume and hope that this is all part of their plan and they've got all this figured out. I know that there's some really good, hard-working guys and girls that are on this case that I've met, and they looked me in the eyes and they told me straight out that they're working hard and they're doing everything in their power." Moscow police had asked authorities to look out for the white Elantras. On this day, a Washington State University police officer searched cars that matched that description at the university and found one registered to Brian Kohberger. Grieving families and classmates gathered at the university for a candlelight vigil. Ethan's mother cried as she told mourners, "We are eternally grateful that we spent so much time with him. That's the most important message that we have for you and your families, to make sure that you spend as much time as possible with those people, because time is precious and it's something you can't get back." Madison's father said his only child was a hard worker, nice to everybody, and smart and funny and beautiful. Kaylee's father said she and Madison were inseparable best friends since the 6th grade, and they died together in the same room in the same bed. Police announced to the public that they were looking to speak with the driver of a white 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra that was seen in the immediate area of the victim's house early on November 13th. Moscow Police Captain Roger Lanier said, "Police are closely guarding the information that we've discovered at the scene and our investigative information because we want to protect the integrity of this investigation." He promised, "This investigation is not cold. We get tips every day that are viable. Those tips help us do everything from clear people to further some of the theories that we're working on. Eventually, we're going to narrow in on exactly what happened and who did it." Brian was stopped by Indiana police for traffic violations. After his semester ended in December, he and his father drove across the country together to the family's home in Pennsylvania. They drove in the white Hyundai Elantra that authorities were looking for. They were stopped twice on this day. Both times, Brian was in the driver's seat. First stop was for speeding, and the second one was for following a car too closely. There was no information at the time on the suspect of the murders or information on the white Hyundai, so they were let go with a verbal warning. DNA from the suspect was recovered on a knife sheath left on a victim's bed. Police recovered trash from Brian's parents' house in Pennsylvania, and a lab determined the DNA from the trash was the father of the person who left DNA on the knife sheath. Brian was arrested in the early hours, about 3 in the morning. Kaylee's family said they didn't know him and were happy, relieved, and thankful about the arrest. Brian, who was arrested on 4 counts of first-degree murder and burglary, agreed to be extradited to Idaho during his court appearance in Monroe County, Pennsylvania. His attorney said his client is eager to be exonerated of these charges and looks forward to resolving these matters as promptly as possible. Brian was extradited from Pennsylvania to Idaho. The Idaho State Court released documents of the police investigation that no one had seen. Kaylee's parents were present in the court as Brian entered, and they watched him in his orange jumpsuit. Charges were read for the murders of each student. The judge said each victim was stabbed and murdered with premeditation, malice, and forethought. His next hearing is on January 12th, where we will find out the outcome of his trial.